Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting of the Litchfield Budget Committee to order. This is June 26, 2014, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have two members who cannot be with us tonight, Ray Peoples and Andrew Cutter. And we have Dan Valancourt, who is running late but will be with us tonight, and he apologizes in advance for disrupting the meeting by showing up late. So with that, we can move on to public input.
Thank you. Jason Burr, 11 Perry Court. It's been a long summer. Haven't been around much, but thank you for hearing me. I read a letter that came from the town of Litchfield to all of the respective boards and commissions in town regarding the New Hampshire Municipal Association. And I'm not going to speak to town council because obviously they work for the Board of Selectmen, and that's really not a question to anything. I found it interesting that the Board of Selectmen passed a resolution as follows. The Board of Selectmen hereby directs the New Hampshire Municipal Association and Town Council that they are only to provide legal opinions and advice to the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, the Town Administrator, selected town officials, and only the chairs of the following town committees or boards, and they list all of them. I'll stop there and work my way down. I don't know what statute or binding agreement allows our Board of Selectmen to direct the New Hampshire Municipal Association, as they're an independent organization. So I'm not sure how they can direct them to do anything, considering that on their own website, they're an independent organization, nonpartisan. It says the New Hampshire Municipal Association membership is open to the cities and towns of New Hampshire. Membership entitles a municipality to participate in the development and adoption of NHMA legislative policy and to receive a full range of services offered, including the following: legal advisory services and access to the legal services hotline. The NHMA attorneys are available to answer inquiries and provide general legal assistance to elected, all of them, every elected person, and appointed officials from member municipalities by email and phone. In other words, if I was appointed, I could so assume that duty. But the point is they have a charter that is not bound by any member Board of Selectmen to do anything. So the letter that went to the board said further that any legal opinions issued by town council, and again, that's not a question, and or the New Hampshire Municipal Association be copied to the chairman, and they can request that. They'd like to be copied on anything that comes back. The chairman of the Board of Selectmen and or designee shall inform the NHMA and town council, as well as chairman of the boards and committees in this motion, of these requirements. Again, this is a separately elected committee established in RSA. The Board of Selectmen have no directive over you. You're an independent committee on purpose. If they came under the Board of Selectmen and they could direct you, then they could tell you anything about anything. You are independent and can make up your own minds. Shall immediately and annually thereafter provide a list of the names of the chairs of the boards qualified to receive legal opinions. Through town council, obviously, but again, the New Hampshire Municipal Association is not for select people. It's for every elected people. Now, if the Board of Selectmen requests, but they didn't, they requests a list from you all saying, hey, what do you know? When did you find out? Who'd you talk to? That's certainly something this committee can forward along, I suppose, if they chose. Board of Selectmen can't require it. I thought that was interesting. And then it says, I would appreciate your assistance in communicating this request that members of your boards or committees route all legal questions through you as chair. Now, again, You guys can have that policy where you want everything to go through the chair. That's certainly up to you. But you can't make law. You can't make RSA. RSAs have to enable towns and municipalities to do things. There are no statutes that enable the Board of Selectmen to be able to prevent anybody from contacting an independent organization for legal advice that they provide when we are members of. So they cannot create a rule or a law or a statute that doesn't exist to enable them to do it. The other thing is, this is very well crafted, and it says all opinions, in other words, all information received has to come through. And I think it was crafted well on purpose, because legally they can't stop anybody from calling with a question and saying, hey, or New Hampshire Municipal Association, here is my question. How they deliver the answer, I suppose, is up to them, whether it be through the chairs or, I suppose they can choose however to answer you. But they cannot stop you from asking a question. You cannot be stopped from calling them with a question. That is what they're there for. It's in their charter. It's for every elected official in every member community. Okay? So you have to ask yourselves why. Why is it that the Board of Selectmen have chosen to try to stifle elected people in this community from asking the questions unfettered? If questions are simply routed and forwarded via email, perhaps. But how can you effectively manage a question by phone? When a person is on the phone, you can ferret out, you can dig down, you can drill into the question as a person is speaking to you to ensure proper communication. What happens in an email chain, and I'm sure all of you in business understand this, is you ask a question via email. It relies on the person reading it to understand it in the way you asked it. And so usually there's a large back and forth until every possible answer is ferreted out and you get to that point. It's not official, that's not efficient in a government, because there's quorum issues, there's back and forth questions issues, it's just not effective. And that's why they'll take your call and answer the questions. And then it's up to the person who gets the answer to effectively communicate it back to the board, right? But we all know it's how and what is in your question as to what gets answered. I can ask questions to gain the exact answer I want, right? That's why it's very important to have, it would be my preference, if there was a question, 8, 9 people ask it. Because everybody asking it may ask it a little different and or get a little bit different answer. And then you have that conversation amongst you here at this table, right? If you prevent that, every single thing is funneled through one point, and you may never get to the correct answer. Okay? It's not a government body you're talking to, so there's no quorum issues, there's no legalities or right to know issues. It's there as a resource for you all. And we heard so eloquently from Mr. Lemire, who sits on the board of that organization, how very important it is to our community for legal advice, not only to save money, but the fact that they're very accurate, very good, and we should be using them as often as we can. He's a very large advocate and proponent to the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and he should be, right? He's on the governing board of directors. You would imagine that is important to him. So please, I ask you, don't simply take what the Board of Selectmen have given you as statute or as a thing that they can even begin to mandate, because it is not. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other community input, moving on to review and revision, any additions to the agenda? Is there anything you feel that we need to cover tonight that's not here? All righty. Review and acceptance of the minutes of May 22nd. Did everybody have a chance to review those? Are there any corrections, changes?
I want to make one change. Last page, last comment, Ms. Pascucci commented that he, and I think we even talked about it when I was mentioning it, says, does not make statements or decisions based upon emotion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
left out to him.
Yeah, that does not make statements or decisions based upon emotion, and then the rest is correct. It says, but make statements based upon research, his perceptions, and due diligence.
Any other changes
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
as amended?
Yes, amended, thank you.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, the minutes are approved. Correspondence. I had quite a bit of correspondence this month.
Wow.
Last night, you should have received the school district's budget updates and computer tech plan, excuse me. So that came last night. We had a question by Mr. Spencer for the school district, so you should have been forwarded information about the special education paper trail for transportation and tuition.
That's that?
The date on it is June 5th, so I'm going to assume that's when I forwarded it. We have a correspondence from the New Hampshire Municipals Association, which is part of our conversation later. We had a question by Mr. Pascucci about the resolution from the selectmen, and there's a whole series of correspondence from legal counsel through the town. There was the resolution itself of June 2nd from the selectmen. There was a legal counsel question about the role of the budget committee, that it was also forwarded from the Board of Selectmen. We had, I have information from Mr. Peoples. Again, during the town discussion, he would like this shared with the committee. And I have.
Did we get that?
No, he just sent it to me and said he could not be here today and asked
Okay.
me to share this with the committee. And then, questions, town expense questions from Andrew Cutter. And I think that was the last, those are all the correspondence I received. Have I missed anything that anybody knows of?
No, were they also, every correspondence is also included in the minutes, right?
Yes.
So desire.
Oh, I thought that was kind of a
yes.
normal thing, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
They're being attached?
last month they were.
When I send the approved minutes, I attach any correspondence that you want attached. If there's something you don't want attached, that's fine. It's up to you guys.
No, I can't recall having seen attachments, but that's.
I don't send it with the draft minutes, I send it with the approved minutes.
Okay.
So Jason will get the approved minutes in the
Okay.
morning with the.
So is it a habit then for all correspondence to be attached, that that's normal?
My feeling is, yeah,
Yes.
because that was the whole point of either not having extraneous conversations
Right.
during the month, or we have them, we discuss them during the meeting, and then they become part of the official.
Okay, good.
All right, that's all I have for correspondence, if nobody else has anything I've missed. Reports, we'll move on and start with school.
I have the enrollment numbers. Share them.
I'm gonna grab a couple for the people who are missing.
Oh, don't worry about me, I already have it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Before I start with any numbers, just a couple of points of clarification. One was asked as far as information flow.
Mm-hmm.
And the direction is to go through the chair, who will then go through me, and then I'll redirect and report back to the chair.
So nothing directly to the business administration?
Right.
Okay.
So I'll go to the chair and then to myself.
Don't hold on to them.
What's that?
Said, don't hold on to them and
Nope.
don't filter them, which is what's
Nope.
happened in the past.
In this way, it's just one person going back and
That's
forth.
fine.
And just make it easy.
No problem.
The other, not at a last meeting, but the previous meeting, I mean, mention to them as far as in one of your upcoming meetings that you're going to try to like back into budgets as far as establish a number.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I can tell you that as the board, it's not something we're gonna look at. I mean, we're gonna look at the budget because it's impossible for,
Agree
as
with
you
you.
know. I mean, the revenues aren't there and it's like impossible throwing numbers out there.
Part of the discussion tonight, I think, right? Yeah.
Yep.
All right. The next is the transportation numbers as far as the contract. Contract is for the first year, it's gonna be a 15% increase. So our bus costs will be going from $229 to $263. And then each of the following 4 years will be an additional 5% increase.
Mm.
So by the fifth year, our bus costs will have risen slightly over $100.
Okay, now, did the board sign the contract?
Yes, last night.
Can we get a copy of the contract, please?
Yep.
And my comment, 15% increase is what the superintendent asked for. It's what the budget committee recommended, and the school board, in their infinite wisdom, bumped it up by another $40,000 at the deliberative session, okay? That resulted in the budget committee not backing the operating budget. No reason for it.
Well, I think the rate would have been higher had we not go with a 5-year contract. And I think
Again,
that's the
again,
number we're-
the
yeah, I
numbers
think we're
say-
looking for one- we were looking for that 1-year number.
The numbers say there was no reason for it, Brian. You know, it was
Yep.
just ego.
I don't seem to have the email that you're referring to on the 4th or the 5th as far as questions for sped transportation, but if I can answer it for you, I'll try.
I'm telling
It was,
no, it was the audit trail that I'd asked for.
yeah, he received it from,
And I
directly from
think we all
Frank.
got it.
Yeah,
I know you got it.
I thought there was questions about it, so.
No, there are no questions. I just wanted to see the audit trail. That was all it was, Brian.
And the other thing, again, there's still spend down going on right now. There's still a few more days before the end of the year. With sped right now, I believe it's, and the numbers are gonna change a little bit too. There's at least available right now, $119,000, and that can go up anywhere between $20,000 to $60,000. And then from the other side, it's about $288,000, so we're talking probably $400,000, slightly over. They'll be going back.
Of what?
Funds,
underspend
correct,
for just special ed or
No, between-
district-wide?
district-wide.
That's different from what he said in the memorandum here.
I'm not sure what he sent you, but I mean, there's still spending, there's still spending down going on, there's still invoices coming in.
I recognize that, but if I read his report, he took that into account, and he was projecting an overall fund balance of over $650,000,
Yeah, but there's still,
of which 360 was under expenditure.
yeah, but there's still monies out there that are covered that will be spent.
Which he took into account in his report. I mean, did you read the report?
I did. I was
How
there
do you-
last night.
How do you have a
I talked
different
to him
number?
this morning. So,
Why
well,
do
from
why do you
sped-
have different numbers?
Well, because from sped, it's $120,000 from sped. What, I
Yeah.
don't know what you have for a number.
I'm looking right at the report. And he was looking at projected fund balance of special ed, 119,000 underspent, regular education, 170,000 underspent, district school admin, 65,000 underspent, and self-funded programs, $38,000 underspent. That's a total of $361,000.
Yeah, well, we're not at the end of the year yet either.
But, I know that, but this is his projected based upon what he expects to spend by the end of the year. Am I misreading this report, Cindy?
I didn't read it, so I
I don't
didn't
think
get
I
a chance
am.
to read it, so.
I mean, bottom line, there's gonna be money there.
Yep.
And just let me make a point. When this budget was put together, one of the last things this committee did was make a blanket $150,000 reduction in salaries and benefits, okay?
Yep.
And if I read these numbers correctly and take into account that you added an autism teacher that we funded through the special ed account, okay? That $150,000 was the right number. Yet it caused all sorts of anguish among the school board, the superintendent who was talking about rifting 2.5 teachers, and it wasn't necessary. And the numbers say it wasn't necessary. So, again, the only reason that we get this to look at year end is to say, did we make a mistake as a budget committee on some of these things? And the numbers I see here, say that the cuts we made, which were really caused issues with the school board were legitimate cuts. And the numbers say they were.
Yeah, and would say this with special education also. I mean, there was a savings in special education that you can't account for at the beginning of the year when we have students that aged out, students that moved out. So, I mean, that was a big chunk of the money.
Can't you account for aging out though? You know when the birth is,
No, it depends when it falls.
but don't you know that in the student practice?
You do, but they still may require services. And it depends when it falls in the semester, and it depends when their birthday.
Brian, my answer to that is that, yes, that's true, and we have ins and outs every year. And if you look at historically, ins and outs every year, the monies every year, what we request, you request, and what gets actually spent, every year it gets underfunded.
And plus, if
Excuse
you,
me, overfunded. It's overfunded. okay?
and
So,
if you remove the special ed
Yeah,
underspend, you still have a significant underspend. So we're not even taking into account special education.
right.
yeah. And my only reason, there was so much anguish over the $150,000 cut, how unreasonable it was, and it really was not. And I know you saw it, Cindy, and you know, we all saw it.
Right, but also the bulk of the money that's coming back isn't necessarily from underspend as much as it is from the return from the insurance,
What was
from
that?
from LGC Health.
Yeah, that's on the revenue side?
Yep,
Yeah,
And what was that total?
238,000.
yeah. That's on the revenues. That's why the total fund balance is over $600,000 according to the report here.
Yeah. And then-
And over half is revenue.
Did you?
One more.
Go ahead.
Hammering away. On the sped transportation, and
Yep.
this is no knock on you, Brian, okay? The budget committee cut the sped transportation by $18,000, okay? The school board actually reduced it, they took out the third special ed plus that they had in there, so we took that into account. Our reduction was $118,000, okay? You're still looking at an underspend in that budget of $29,000 this year. Okay, which brings you up to $45,000 that you would have underspent, which is about the number that we typically have taken out of special ed
Well, if it ends that way, I mean,
transportation. Pardon?
I said if it ends that way,
It will.
Okay.
It will.
well, we'll know when the final numbers come out.
Yeah, I know, but my point being that this committee went round and round on that also, and I was aggravated because it didn't take more, but I was willing to sit back and see what it was, and I think that my number, 50,000, was a better number than what we wound up with. And we'll see that, we'll visit that again in the fall when we do the school budget and see where that falls out.
One of the things that last month you said hadn't been finalized yet was the revised 2015 budget. Has that been, have you received that yet?
Yep, that should have been sent to you last evening.
Oh, is that part of,
No?
No, I'll have to send it in the morning. He only told me to send what he told me to send.
Okay.
Didn't realize that he wanted me to send it, but I'll get it to you.
Okay.
I can get it to you right now, actually. if you want.
I just one other comment too. The report that had the existing budget on there had everything in there that I'd like to see, including the function and the
Codes.
object codes. Because some of those we've been getting, they've been missing and what have you. That's the package we should see.
so what came last night was
Yes.
what we want?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Which one was sent, Michelle, the 81-page one?
Yes.
Yeah.
You wanna start off just with
I made
the-
sure that
with
I
the summary?
combined everything in it. I've asked him for
Right.
everything.
Yeah, the other one is 2015.
Yeah, the 2015 budget. I can send that to you if you want. I can open my email and send it to you.
Yep, that would be lovely.
And I can send you the bus one.
Bus contract? Good, thank you. Anything else for school district?
No?
Yeah. It was good, I mean, Bill brought up a couple of good points. It's good to look back to see if there was any mistakes made on our part or anywhere. I think the governing bodies and it's a perfect example where the governing bodies and the budget committee should be on the same page and attempting to achieve the same goal. Get the job done, work toward that goal, fund it properly and adequately. Don't overfund it, don't underfund it. So, I mean, if we remember, when we're coming to budget season, if we could remember these examples, while we're moving forward. It should not be a battle. It should not get to the level where it gets to that level where it's turning close to a fight, in my opinion. It needs to, we should be on the same page. And Bill brought up a couple excellent examples of where it did kind of get a little out of control, and maybe the results did change or not go the way that we all wanted it to because of some of those battles. That's it for me.
And how do I send it to the whole budget committee?
There should be a tab that says budget committee.
But calm, right?
Yep, budget com, yeah. If you want, just send it to me and you'll have to wait till I get home tonight to forward it.
If
I don't wanna
you're on
read
the
it
town, you're on
tonight.
you're on the school emails.
Yeah.
Just send it to budcom@litchfieldnh.gov. And it'll get done. BUDCOM,
At Litchfield.
nh.gov.
I'm just taking a look at the enrollments. Are there any comments or questions on that? It looks as though we're up a little bit. I don't recall what the projection was for next fall.
It was close to this.
Is that, but in terms of kindergarten, we're about where we began last year, and in terms of first grade, we're about where we began last year.
If it bounces back, it has two M's in it, it's one or the other. It shows up every time like that.
All right, if there's nothing more for school, let's move on to town.
I'm sorry, John, did you say it was budcom@litchfieldnh.gov?
Yeah, I believe it's with two M's though.
2 M's?
Yep. As in commas,
I
committee.
think it is too.
It's in my saves, it just types every time, so.
Yeah, I don't really look at it. It comes right
Yeah,
out.
I mean, there was a lot of correspondence, I'm not sure where you want to start, but, I mean, as general update, I mean, the biggest things that are going on within the town, obviously, is, managing the budget we have today, but road projects are well underway and have not completed. Most of the major projects are done. We've had some, within the police department, we've had some cruiser breakdowns and an accident that we'll talk about if you want to hear about that. Other than that, things are going fairly well from that perspective. I have all Andrew's questions answered. I did send it out prior to the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I know he had a lot of questions. I'm not sure if it's, worth covering, but he asked a question about the highway block grant and why it was why it was not, it was still at 45% remaining. Again, as I said, projects are underway. Billing is what billing is. We expect all the funds that were raised by both the block grant and also by the warrant Article 6 to be expended toward the end of the year. He also had a question around our salt budget being overspent by $17,000. I think we talked about that at the end of last year and this year. We had a very rough winter. We did exhaust that fund, that line. We're okay to the bottom line of that account and of that department. Our salt shed is full, so we expect to have we expect to be okay, but we also have that, the emergency fund that we have set aside for that. If we have to tap into that, we'll tap into that to make sure that we don't exceed the bottom line. Question around striping came up, and why we only had spent 10%. I think if you watched the last Board of Selectmen's meeting, the road agent was looking for ways to defer some of the costs and to try to bring some services in-house, so he delayed some of those projects, but based on the decision of the board, he's going to proceed to go forward with the planning of rest of the line striping and stuff that would typically happen throughout this summer anyway. It's not really delayed, it's just been delayed.
He was talking about using a specialized outfit to do pothole repairs. You familiar with that?
Yeah,
Is he still planning on doing that, or?
he's, if I recall, he's done a few with that company. I don't know if he's actually going to follow through with all of them.
Yeah.
I'd have to double check with Jack.
I didn't know whether the default budget might have put a squash on that.
No, because it ended up being cheaper to do it with the, if I remember the program, because some laser heats up the ground, it
Yeah.
actually was cheaper in the long run to do it that way, and it was more, it was less return trips to patch it. But I'm not sure, with all the paving that's going on around town and all that, I'm not sure where that sits, and I'd have to fall back up with Jack. He asked a question regarding the town clerk mileage and tolls and taxes, and just as a reminder, the town clerk office budget is split in half, and all costs are equally spent across. The only time there's charges to a specific account or the other is when it's specific to that task. If it's a clerk show or something like that, it's aligned to that. But for the most part, almost all the expenditures out of that department are divided in half between the two accounts. He had a question around Memorial Day supplies. He wanted to understand why it nearly doubled. Obviously, we just had Memorial Day. We typically do a lot of groundskeeping stuff. I think in years past, that work was charged to general government buildings, and it wasn't in the Memorial Day Fund. This year it was charged there. With regards, he also had a question around the condition of the town cruisers and our fire apparatuses and how the vehicle repairs were tracking. I'll start with the fire apparatus. Almost all of our fire apparatus are in fairly good shape. They're aging, obviously. Last year, we did have some significant repairs that occurred last year. This year, we did have the forestry truck body rebuilt and some other work done to that truck. We spent about $17,000 to date so far this year, I believe. We expect to stay within the budget, which is around $28,000. We're just keeping we're keeping the equipment running in safety and be able to respond capable. With regards to police vehicles, Cruisers 3 and 4, which are the two vehicles that we placed 2 years ago or a year ago, they're working as we expect. Mileage is a lot higher, tracking a lot higher than we would have originally planned for in the rotation schedule that we had originally defined. Cars 5 and 6 were the two aging fleet members. They've suffered significant failures and they've been out of service a lot, so that's why cars 3 and 4 are racking up miles. Just as a note, also the detail cars. One detail car was taken totally out of service due to its age and its inability, just the cost to repair it. We're looking at ways to try to deal with that issue too. As I said, cars 5 and 6. Car 6, I think it was. One of the two cars was involved in an accident that suffered about $4,100 worth of damage. That's in the shop being repaired right now, covered by the insurance with our $1,000 deductible. All the cars are tracking high on the maintenance. We expect that to continue as we keep those two vehicles working in the fleet. And then I think he finally asked about what the Board of Selectmen was doing as far as priorities for FY15. I think we're still working within the current budget. We're looking at where we're tracking. Obviously, things that were deferred from this budget season due to default will be reconsidered for the FY15. We have issues around, again, the cruisers, and we do have some other issues with the fire department and that equipment that we have to deal with. So all those things will be discussed. On a positive note, we did sign a new health insurance contract, where when we go to renew, I think it's in July, we are expected to actually live within the budget we have now with no increase, I think, the following year. So that's good for us. And these are all written up in the notes, and like I said, I sent it to Andrew and yourself.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
No, I sent it to Andrew and
Oh.
yourself. It didn't come through the chair. It came to Frank, and Cindy was copied on it, and I'm not sure, I thought the committee's policy was to go through the chair and everything funneled that way, but either way, I
Yeah.
forwarded it that way. I sent it out before the meeting, so that's probably why I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, I
But
didn't.
all the complete detail write-ups is in that, and, take a look
Okay.
at it. If there's any
I'll
questions that come up
forward
out of that, just let me know and we'll clarify anything.
Yeah, no, the last correspondence I got was from Dan.
Yeah.
All right.
I apologize ahead of time for being tardy.
Yes.
All right, Dan, I thought I was gonna be late too, don't worry about it.
I did relay that,
Yeah.
but apparently then John sent one after that I didn't see.
Yeah. I don't know, that's all I have for general update. I don't know if anybody has any other questions.
Does anybody have any general budget,
Questions?
town questions?
Well, regarding the cruisers, I
Mhm.
mean, you're down one, some breakdowns on the other two, excuse me. Was purchasing one still something you guys were gonna look to this year?
We talked about it in our June 2nd meeting, I believe. To be honest with you, we don't have the funds to do it. And because of with the over expenditures we already have in the budget due to the last winter, there was a decision to sort of wait till about September to look at it again, to see how we've been tracking. due to accounting issues, right, we have some savings in our budget due to people transitioning away and job changes and stuff like that, so there is some money somewhere. But we'll look at it in September again. If we have if we have other major failures, we may have to do something sooner, but, you know, at this point, if we wait until September, there's probably no cruisers gonna be available for us anyway. When we looked in the beginning of June, we were able to locate 2, potentially, and that was the last 2 in the region that were on the state bid. So, we'll have to cross it when we get there. I mean, it is a priority, right?
Anything else? All right. The next item, our last committee meeting, we had a discussion about the role of the budget committee after town meeting. And the selectmen forwarded that question on to legal counsel, and they forwarded us a response. And I know Andrew had missed that discussion, and he was anxious to be a part of that tonight, so he asked that it be an agenda item, and unfortunately Andrew's sick tonight, but it is an agenda item, it's up for discussion.
Why don't we move it to next meeting?
We can do that.
Let's table the discussion.
Or we could
I mean,
begin a discussion a little bit and talk about it again next meeting if we need to, or again.
I'd rather get it done and out of the way.
Because, I mean, I'd rather get it done and out of the way also, that's why I have some questions.
well, I think if you have a question around legal opinion about the role, you're asking the wrong person. That's council's opinion, and that's the board agrees with council. on
I
this.
mean, are you referring to the email various lease questions?
No,
No,
this is the role of the budget committee after the town meeting.
Yeah, this was to question their decision, what is our role. It was, well, just based on questions and concerns raised at the last budget meeting, the Board of Selectmen asked our council to clarify the role and responsibilities of the budget committee, specifically the role and responsibilities after town meeting. The question was, posed, budget committee's role after town meeting is fairly limited. RSA 32:32 provides, upon request by the budget committee, the administrative official shall forthwith submit to the budget committee a comparative statement of all appropriations and all expenditures by them made in such detail as the budget committee may require. The budget committee shall meet periodically to review such statements. The provisions of this section shall not be construed to mean that the budget committee or any member of the committee shall have any authority to dispute or challenge the discretion of other officials over current town or district expenditures, except as provided in RSA 32:23. RSA 32:23 says, upon receipt of the reports provided for by RSA 32:22, the budget committee shall examine the same promptly, and if it shall be found that the governing body or town manager have failed to comply with the provisions of this chapter concerning expenditures, a majority of the committee, at the expense of the municipality, may petition the Superior Court for removal as provided in RSA 32:12. Essentially, these statutes, when taken together, allow the budget committee to review expenditures to ensure that the bottom line budget is not being overspent. They do not give the budget committee the authority to challenge expenditures or transfers that do not exceed the bottom line or violate some other provision of the law, such as no means no provision. Please let me know if I can be of additional assistance.
I actually agree with all of that, so I don't have any questions about that. I mean, that's basically, all you gotta do is read the RSA, and that's all they do with
But
it.
if you recall the discussion, those RSAs were read in the meeting, and there was still debate about it.
That's not really what was
No, that's not what we're
debated.
talking about.
Yeah.
No.
Well, it was
Well-
directly related to the leases, I agree, but,
See, my question was whether or not we were within the bounds of the law by including appropriations for a lease when that lease had already been complete.
and you have,
The one you sent out did not answer that question.
there's another set of legal opinions that were sent out shortly afterwards that does say that the board
Can you
is within.
point me to the question that answers that?
That's not the one. It's another,
I have it right here, the least
But-
one.
yeah, there's the one about related leases.
Cindy, the only problem I had with her explanation,
Mhm.
it just boggles my mind. that if, in the process of reviewing either one, I don't care which group, bottom line budget, we see in there that they are spending money on something that was covered by the no means no law,
Mhm.
that we have absolutely no role in that.
No, it
It
does
says
say
you
we do.
It says you do.
No, it doesn't.
No, it does.
It does. It says, or the no means no law.
That's not how I read what she said here.
No.
Okay? They do not give the budget committee the authority to challenge expenditures or transfers that do not exceed the bottom line or violate some other provision of the no means no law.
Right, such
Does not give
as,
us the authority in a violation of the no means no law. That's what I read her saying here.
Well,
My initial reaction was yours, and then I reread what she specifically said. And she said, we don't have any role as long as it's within the bottom line budget, even if we see something that is in violation of no means no.
yeah, I read it the same way, but I have a feeling that's probably accurate, that you don't have a.
John, you read it the same way?
Initially, when I read it, like, oh, yeah, you could, but you read it this way, it does say you have no authority.
Exactly.
And I
don't think,
And I think,
I don't think she's correct.
the enabling RSA, I think you don't have an authority, but as a citizen you do, right? I mean, no means no is a RSA, it's a state law.
Well, that's what she's saying, we don't have the authority, but.
As a budget
to me,
committee
that-
member, I
That
think.
makes no sense,
Yeah, I don't
because
know.
then if we see something supposedly, the only thing we can go to court to remove folks for is if you're gonna overexpend the bottom line budget, not if there's something in there that is blatantly in violation of the law.
I can
Makes
get.
no sense to me.
I can get that piece of it clarified.
And I don't care, we'll live with him, whatever it is, but it just made no sense to me.
one of the things that we had talked about, and John had mentioned using town legal counsel, but perhaps the municipal association would be better, is to have a meeting where we sit down with the selectmen, the budget committee, a representative from the municipal association, and we hash back and forth, what do you mean when you say that? Do you say that this way, or, and we can get our roles clarified that way, because,
I don't think there's a need to do that. I mean, she's given us an
But-
opinion, which is a legitimate opinion.
Right.
other questions?
I think it just needs clarification.
Yeah, well, I can get that piece of it clarified. I would just step back. I know I made that offer in the last meeting, and the board's direction is if you want to have that type of session, it will be town council. Town council will be the one representing this community, so it will be town council.
Or we could have our own discussion with the municipal board. if we
Right,
wanted
we
to.
can call them in
You
here.
could,
Yeah.
certainly can do that.
Yeah.
and have a workshop, because I looked ahead to what they usually do in September. It's not spelled, there's an agenda spelled out yet exactly what they're gonna cover, but in the past, they haven't covered specifically. They've given you guidelines, well, what do you do in this scenario if this happens during budgeting season? What happens at town meeting? They don't give you any specific guidelines to what the role of the budget committee is. And I know one of the things that I see over and over again, sort of the underlying theme is, I don't think most elected officials in the state of New Hampshire, because I don't think it's particular to Litchfield, I don't think it's particular to the Selectmen Budget Committee or School Board. I think it's a New Hampshire, that there's a lot of committees and boards in New Hampshire that don't understand. When you are elected, you are only elected to take action in a duly called, posted meeting. And then you can give all the authority you want, make all the decisions you want in that meeting, but when the meeting adjourns, you as an individual cannot go out and then conduct business on behalf of the committee, board,
Correct, you cannot on behalf of the committee, absolutely.
right. And you cannot act as a member of the committee.
That's different, depending upon what it is.
And that's one of the things that I don't think people understand, and that's one of the things that I think is fundamental to being elected that I don't think is clear, and that's one of the things I would like to find out from the New Hampshire Municipal Association, come in and do a workshop so that we understand where our boundaries are, because I think we all have a different idea of where our boundaries are and aren't. And I, for one, would like that clarified. I know when I sat on the school board, that's one of the workshops that the School Boards Association did. What are your boundaries? What can you do and can't you do unless the whole committee gives you the authority to do it?
I know what one of our boundaries are, which is clear in the RSA. We have to keep our eye on the budget to make sure that the budget is not overspent, correct? Is that clear? The bottom line. The bottom line is not
Overall
overspent.
budget, not the individual departments.
Listening to the Board of Selectmen, it's a tight budget this year, right?
Yep.
Okay. One thing I learned was those the amount owed on those 2 police cruisers that were leased last year, around this time, it's still about $80,000, is that correct? Which I guess, because
I believe you're correct, I would have to double check, and just to cut off the conversation, because, to be honest, it's held at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, it's already been publicly discussed. The cruises, when we purchased those 2 cruises, we had to upload upfront all the upfit and the repairs of the other 2 cruisers.
Right.
And we absorbed that all in that lease.
Right, no, clearly, cruisers are $20-something thousand, so you can't buy 2
Well,
in
they're
'08.
$30,000.
So, I mean, I just wasn't aware of the number, and I don't think everybody here was aware of the number, so basically, we still owe 80 on that. We have to keep a close eye on this budget. We are responsible for this to make sure it doesn't go over the bottom line. But as it stands right now, unless something changes, they are gonna overspend that budget.
No, we're not.
Because that 80,000 has to be paid off this year.
No, it does
And also
not.
the skid steer lease has to be, or purchase has to be paid off this
Chris,
year.
Yeah, it should be.
no, it does not. And how is that part of this it's, you.
That's not the subject we're talking about.
That's right,
Right.
and you're making a statement that's completely factually
I am not.
untrue.
Well-
We have opinion from council that we are
You're on
correct.
the, you're on the lease question, which is a separate question.
Right, that's
Let's
a sep-
hold that discussion
Okay.
for that.
And to be frank, I'm not gonna debate it. We have council has given us an opinion, the board believes we're just
Council
to
did
do
not
it.
give opinion.
Council has indicated that we are acting
I can wait
acting
until we get
within.
on that subject, or we can keep
Yeah,
on it
let's
now.
reel it back into the role of the budget committee.
So-
Individual members, group.
So again, it'd be nice if Andrew was here, because I think he should hear this also.
Okay.
If you can get clarification what the or violate,
Yeah, I'll.
what that
clarify
meant.
that piece, yes.
Because quite honestly, I look at, if in fact, I'll talk lease for 2 seconds. If in fact, what has been done with the lease was in violation of another RSA, to me, that would also fall under this no means no.
And that's how we got started in the conversation originally.
Pardon?
That's how we got started in this whole conversation originally.
Yeah, and just saying that I don't think if council means that we can't question any expenditure that looks like it is in violation of some other law, okay, then it's a dead issue. If she's saying, no, she didn't mean that, if we saw something like no means no, we could raise that question, then it says we can raise it about other issues which may or may not be.
I'll clarify
Okay,
that for you.
so that's the clarification. I
So
want.
how do we want to ask that? Because I want to make sure we get it. So can the budget committee question any other RSA that we feel has been
By a law.
violated?
I believe you can.
I think John understands what.
Yeah, no, I believe you can.
Okay.
I think the whole notion was, the conversation started about, the budget's been passed, you've done your job, we've got an operating budget, we're working forward on it.
Yeah.
And the questions, even when you look at some of the questions that I just answered tonight, are to the point where they're getting to the level where it seems like you're trying to micromanage the town operations. And I think the clearly part
I
is,
agree with you, John.
at this point, your task is done. Now, everything you're doing now is looking forward for next year. So you're gaining information about how we're spending and where the ups are and all that stuff, so that as we formulate next year's budget, you have that working knowledge. Not to question whether or not we spent, $10 on pencils here and $20 of pencils over there.
I agree.
But I'll clarify the actual part. I believe that you are correct. If you see a complete violation of the law, obviously you challenge it.
I would think so,
Yeah.
John.
I just think there may be a process thing where you, as a budget committee, you can't, but I would think you could. And I think we've had those discussions in the past.
Yeah.
Well,
We've
Well,
talked about knowing what the
when it
impact
says
is.
the budget committee can petition Superior Court for removal, then on what grounds, If it's
Overspending.
because the budget, the operating budget was overspent, well, oh Christ, you don't know that until after the fact anyways, then you got a new election, a new board coming in. It seems to me that the intent there is if something is going on that is clearly wrong, that the budget committee has a role in that, so.
and there's another RSA that in the past I recall being questioned is when a warrant article says you can spend $10,000 on X, Y, Z, and the selectmen say, oh, we'll spend $10,000. We've decided that ABC is a better, you can't do that because it's spelled out in a warrant article. And I know in the past that's been challenged, so that would be another
There's two
article.
different types of warrant articles, too.
Yeah.
One that you can't, I forget the terminology, the one you cannot touch the funds at all, and the other ones you can redirect the funds. There's a term
Yeah,
for it.
and that's where
Escapes me.
I remember in the past questions have come up, and the budget committee has questioned whether a warrant article is being
So-
spent properly
An example of a warrant article, we could do that too, which we haven't decided to do, is, this, for example, the maintenance of, the painting of Old Town Hall. If we choose that we just don't have the funds for it, we can revert those funds someplace else. That's a warrant article that, I guess, fits-
Non-lapsing.
that has the clarification that says we can take that money for other priorities that become more critical. But I'm trying to remember what
Get the
the terminology is.
NHMA in here and ask these questions.
Well,
It's
and
a reasonable
that,
request.
that is my question to this group, because I did a little research and I find it very lacking any written information directed at budget committees in particular as to how to conduct, what are your responsibilities? And I think that it would be valuable to have, because we all have a different idea of where our boundaries are, and I don't know how else to say it.
Okay, well, the way this works then, I'd like to make a motion to direct the chair to contact the NHMA and get them in here for a half-hour, 45-minute session at the earliest convenience.
Okay, there's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been seconded. Any discussion? One thing you have to understand is the brief look that I took, there's a cost for that. Off the top of my head, I don't recall what the cost was, but I do know that there's a cost for them to come in and run a workshop or a,
Is it like the cost, like when we all go or choose to go, it's about $50 on that September 18th workshop?
I don't think it was that small amount. I want to say it was pretty substantial, which is why I kind of
Well, the budget committee doesn't have any money as a group.
we are in the budget. I just, and certainly the selectmen can choose to approve.
I don't see why the selectmen would choose not to approve us learning our role through that source. So I think it's well worth it to avoid all of these questions we're having. I mean, they're speaking with their attorneys, and a lot of money's being spent. I think it's money well spent to finally answer these questions, because you have some very good questions and concerns.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, a little late in the game for that. If I were gonna do something like that, I would do it when we had a new budget committee formed, which would be after the election in March. I understand where you're coming from. I'm not sure that meeting with them will have any impact whatsoever on how we approach the school budget or the town budget this fall, and that's our main job. I think the education session would have been fine a month or so earlier, okay? And if we want to do that, then let's plan on it next year, okay? Put it in the budget so we have money in there to cover it and get it out of the way. And I don't honestly think that meeting with them in another couple of months will do anything in terms of resolving anything that we might have open, if we have anything open. I don't see we're going to have a lot of things open, to be honest with you. We've got opinion on council. We know how we're going to live with that, I think, and I'll table it until we get that discussion. I just don't think there's a need for it
Just
this particular point in time. I think we've gone past the point of return on that.
Just to point out that the New Hampshire Municipal Association does hold budgeting workshops, and they don't hold them till September. So obviously, they don't believe that September or as late as September is too late for a budget committee to learn about its roles and
Yeah,
responsibilities.
but the issues we're talking about are not the preparation of the budget. The issues we're talking about is what our roles, I think, is what our roles are once the budget has been passed. I mean, that's what this is all about, I think.
Well, I agree to a certain degree, but I mean, obviously, these same kinds of issues can come up anytime during the rest of the year, during budget season or not, and,
Again, that's just my opinion.
And I think the questions should be asked too about budget questions. I know I plan on going to the September 18th workshop, and I would encourage everybody to go. A lot of questions are asked. It's very educational. I never think it's too late to possibly learn something, especially a role.
And certainly, one of the things, if you want me to do this, I can also ask them, I'm sure they're preparing for their classes in September. I can ask them, is this something you can add to your agenda and cover in September? And that way, it's not an additional cost on us any more than going to the workshop to begin with. Because, like I said, I certainly believe this is something that throughout the state, this is an issue that other committees need to understand as well. I don't think this is particular to Litchfield or to us. Carrie, do you have any thoughts?
That seems like a reasonable compromise in that way. Especially if you don't know how much it would break the budget. Especially since we're already tight.
Can you read what the motion was, Michelle, so that we know exactly what we're...
Motion for the chair to contact the NHMA to come to, I guess, a meeting, right?
Mhm.
To provide the information that you are seeking.
Okay, so that's to see about coming to a meeting. Do you want to broaden it to bring back information about other avenues that can be, such as the September 18th? And I'll just bring back the information to you so that you can make a determination as to whether it's something that,
Bring back all available, I mean, September 18th, I hope we're all there anyway, but, and they do give ample time for questions, but I think, knowing what we've been going through, I ask a bunch of questions, and if 4 of you aren't here, I'm clearly allowed to ask those questions, but that's what kind of got me in trouble last week, right, or last month, because I asked a question. So, somebody sitting in this room, I think would be great. Just like I remember a number of years ago, school board had New Hampshire School Boards Association come in, and there was probably a little cost to that, and that was a couple hours, and every question was answered. Nobody left that room without knowing their roles. And I thought that was helpful watching from the audience. So the same thing could happen here, and we're all here. So I think that's the route to go. So I'd like to keep my motion as is, whether it passes or fails.
okay. Any further discussion? All right, let's vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
No.
I'm torn. I don't want, I'll go with aye. If it's too late, can I
No,
change the vote to aye?
That's fine. 4-3. The ayes have
Passes
it.
4-3.
All right, I'll look into that information and get that out as soon as I receive it, so that it's something we can have on an agenda item next month.
I'm not committed to it, so.
Right. No, this doesn't commit it. This is just gathering information. This doesn't commit us to it. Anything else on roles and responsibilities based on what we have before us tonight? All right, moving on. Board of Selectmen's resolution of June 2nd.
Before we go there, you want to talk to leases? It's not on the agenda, but,
No, it's not on the agenda. I kind of thought it was,
I mean, I'm not gonna be able to offer any other commentary around it. The Board of Selectmen has accepted the opinion. The Board of Selectmen believes that we are acting within our role and our responsibility and within the law.
I actually agree with what their attorney said. I agree with everything they wrote. The leases,
Yeah,
the
okay.
various lease questions. Here's the one thing, because it might have been a clerical error on the question asked. Because I agree with everything here. It says, if a capital item is purchased on a non-appropriation contract in the subsequent year, the proposed budget passes, does that mean you gotta terminate the lease? And it says, no, you don't. Okay, but that's not what happened. You leased, and then the proposed budget failed. So is that a clerical error, Mr. Brunel? So you asked the wrong question.
No, I don't,
No.
no. We asked the right question. Our appropriation is the default budget.
So you didn't,
And if we can find the funding within that default budget.
but you, no, you said, and the proposed.
And I didn't ask the question, it
Okay,
wasn't, I didn't
Mr.
formulate
Hope.
all the, no.
Who asked the question?
It was several board members taking all the input that we
Okay,
heard.
fine. It says, it didn't say, do you get a budget? It says, and the proposed budget passes. The proposed budget failed. So if that question was asked, the answer would have been yes. The lease has to be terminated.
No.
No,
it
if
would
it
not
fails,
have been.
no, because she tells you right in there that by virtue of the budget failing, the default kicks in, and
Okay.
her reading of the law is that the default budget is an approved
Unless it
budget.
was part of an
Thank-
article that failed, unless it's part of an actual warrant article that failed, meaning the non-operating warrant article. And then nobody's, no, then we are in a no-appropriation.
Thank you
issue.
for bringing that up, Bill, but let me read that. It says here, default budget is the same as, contained as
read
the
it?
operating budget, authorized for the previous year, reduced and increased, as the case may be by debt service or contracts. So the lease contract ceased.
No.
Only if it ceased.
It ceased.
No.
And then
No,
they
no.
began a new one.
No. You were quoting an example where at least past the first year, I believe, and then the following year, it went into default, did you have to pay it off? I think that was the question.
question. That's
And
what
the answer was, no, you don't, because the default is an official approved budget,
Okay,
according to her
then-
opinion.
Then let me
Okay.
submit this to this board then. We don't need to be here. We have, there's nothing, they don't, the Board of Selectmen, or the school board for that matter, does not need to ask for anything. Seriously, now you're gonna think it sound a little snarky. They don't have to ask us for police cruisers, fire trucks, buildings, anything. You know why? Because they could just put it in the default, have a proposed budget failed, and just say, well, it's already a signed contract, therefore, we gotta keep paying it. So they could right now buy 5 police cruisers, outfit them, put them in this year's default, put it in the proposed, which will allow it, the proposed fails, and they'll say, nope, it's approved because the default's approved. We
And if that was
are
the ca-
useless and
Chris, if
serve
that
no
was the
purpose.
case, then I would already have 2 new cruisers already this year and dealing with it and just
You
defer to
could
play. But we're not
do it.
doing that because, no, we're still trying to be, we're trying to be fiscally minded of the fact that we know this is gonna impact the bottom line and we're trying to live within the means
It's
that we have.
different of trying to be and what you're legally obligated to
We're
be.
legal, we are abiding by the law and we're following the law.
You know what, I'm not gonna argue with this anymore either. I encourage everyone here to do their own homework, and I'm gonna tell you this, they did not ask the right question, and number 2, I am going to take that same question that they asked here, I am gonna change the word from passes to failed, which is what really happened, and I'm gonna ask the NHMA. Now, the
You're gonna ask
NHMA,
the MHA through your chair.
I am gonna call the NHMA and send them an email, and they will respond as per your direction to the chair, you, and all the people you want to chair. But I have a right to ask that question. I have a legal right, because I'm an elected official in this town. I will ask, and they will channel the answer properly through Ms. Kuchar, you, and whoever else you have on the list. Okay, 'cause- yes.
Actually, Chris, outside of this meeting, you cannot act as a budget committee member. However, if this committee
And
wants
what's the
to,
point of the organization
Because-
serving elected officials?
because this committee can give him that authorization. So if this committee wants to make a motion and give Chris that
So then we
authorization,
should advise them to change their charter
Cindy,
because they can't talk to anyone.
what is the penalty if I email the NHMA this question tomorrow and say, channel the answer through Cindy Kuchar, John Brunel, and Jason Hogan? What is the penalty if I do that?
There isn't one.
what is the
Okay.
penalty?
So I will be asking that question tomorrow because I have a right to as an elected official. Now, this board now, you can make a motion to restrict me from doing that, and let's vote on it. If that's where you want to go. You see, this is where it's going.
Is there a charge
They
for
want
asking
to
questions?
stifle us getting the right answer,
Chris,
and they're asking the wrong
Chris,
questions.
I'm
is
trying
there-
to give you-
Is there a charge for asking a question?
None.
Because in watching the Board of Selectmen meeting, the whole purpose behind the restriction was to rein in legal costs. If there's no legal
No, it was
costs.
not.
And it was specific, I watched the meeting. I heard a selectman say that in an effort to rein in legal costs, we would like to restrict access to the lawyers and the NHMA.
So what is the reason?
So why
Mr.
is the
Brunel?
rationale?
No, that actually,
All right,
in that, in the way that,
Hold on,
we're
hold on,
kind of slipping
hold
into
on.
this agenda,
Chris-
but.
Chris,
Yes.
I'm trying to give you permission to do that. I'm not trying to restrict you from
That's
doing
fine.
that. I want to give you that authority, but what I'm saying is, this committee needs to give you that authority. You cannot act as a budget committee member outside of this meeting unless this group gives you the authority.
But I
So I'm
disagree.
trying to give you that
But
authority.
that's fine,
And
but I,
several of us disagree with you.
I disagree with
Madam
that.
Chair.
So the point is, feel free, go ahead, give me the
So-
authority if it makes
Can we
people
just
feel
vote
better.
to not?
But I'll be doing
to be
it.
at work for that?
Then you won't get, well, the reason why the motion was made, it was brought up by a member, it was unanimously agreed to, was that, Chris, in your case, you have quoted NHMA responses, and we've never seen it, and the NHMA actually says they never talked to you. So the idea was,
Go ahead,
the idea was, if you're gonna ask, let's make it formal. So there's a process to be followed, so your question gets asked, you ask your question with the authority of the group. How you guys wanna manage it as a committee, that's not relevant.
I just don't
You
recall
ask the
that
question,
being
you ask the
discussed.
question, the response gets sent back to everybody, so we all see it, so we're all working off the same hymn. Because
Fair
right
enough.
now, you've been reading a quote and verse or something we've never seen.
I'm
And when we
not-
talk to the woman, when we talk to the HMA, the person you got your opinion from, no longer works there.
Okay, fine. Well, I'm asking it tomorrow, and everybody will have the same piece of paper in their
Now,
hand.
let me ask you this question.
Yes.
You asked NHA, now you put us at complete odds against town council. you want to work together as a team, and the problem is you keep on putting us against town council. How do we fix that?
And
Well,
the,
there's another question I had, and
You'll have to go to court
All right,
then,
hold on a
right?
minute.
If
It-
the two sides disagree, someone's gonna
Well,
take it
actually,
to
at the end of the day,
court.
the
all
board of
right, hold
selectmen's
on,
the authority
hold on a
in this
minute.
matter, so.
In terms of going against town council, it also goes against the New Hampshire Municipal Association. They said they would abide by it. So you may not get an answer without the authority of this committee. I don't know if they'll do that or not, but they sent an email, a letter saying they would abide by this resolution. So that is a risk that you may take.
It's
I-
also in their guidelines too, I guess.
Well, I have a
Go ahead,
question.
Carrie.
If I have a question relative to the school board, does the NHMA have the resources to answer that question?
I don't know.
Is it just, is there, if I had a school board question relative to our budgeting responsibilities, could I contact the NHMA?
I don't-
Because if the question answer is no, because of this, my question would be, what authority does the Board of Selectmen have to handcuff me in doing my responsibility relative to the school board?
I don't believe they do.
I don't think they have anything.
New Hampshire
about
Municipal Association
Okay.
doesn't have
town
any.
government.
So there's no, if I had a question relative to a school budget obligation? Okay. All right, I just want to make sure
Cindy, the
that,
NHMA just says they're gonna abide by the resolution and say
Right.
they provide the answers. So I could still ask a question, and they'll say, sorry, I can't answer you, Mr. Pascucci, I will email it to you and
but
everyone else.
I would
is
like,
what
I
they'll
would
do.
like to thank Mr. Brunel for clarifying, since that is not at all what I obtained out of the discussion when I watched the Board of Selectmen meeting. It
So-
appeared to me to be purely financially related.
It is financially, because when there's a disagreeing opinion, I'll need to go to our council and get an opinion, which costs us money. That's the argument around the
There won't be a
cost.
disagreeing opinion, it's the correct question being asked, because this
All
is
right,
the wrong
I would
question.
like
We've
to
been down
make-
this path so many times
Yeah,
about questions
John,
being asked.
John, Chris, I would like to make a motion to authorize Chris Pascucci to call the New Hampshire Municipals Association tomorrow, change that word from pass to fail, and have them route an answer back to the selectmen and myself, and I will forward it on to the rest of the committee.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I have a discussion, something about
Go ahead.
discussion. I don't see why anyone in this room would vote no
I don't
on
either.
that question. Okay, I just
don't
want that
either.
to be on record, that I'm saying, I don't know why anybody in this room would vote no to learning something new and changing one word and having it go out so everybody's looking at the same piece of paper.
Exactly.
Okay, let's vote.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Any abstain?
So Chris, no.
Did you, okay, so, all
I said
Okay.
yes, I'm yes. I said a
Okay.
question though for
right,
Chris.
John, you have a question, go ahead.
Please. What question are you going to ask?
Okay, it's going to be right here, I will read it. It's the second question you asked. It says, if a capital item is purchased, and you have it in parentheses, on a non-appropriation contract, in the subsequent year, the proposed budget fails, followed by a few years later, the town operates on a default, but, well, you don't even need that part, because it failed, it's already default. While the item's debt is still being paid off, does that require the town consider the item no longer has an appropriation and the lease terminated?
Well, are you gonna ask the question changing the one word, or are you gonna change the
Well,
sentence? Well, you just said before, you're gonna change one word.
I'm going to change the one word, but it's redundant. So in other words, basically, and the budget fails, and then fails, and fails, and fails.
Doesn't matter. You can
Okay,
ask the
I
same
will
question
change
or-
that one
So
word.
you're changed, so the question is, if a capital item is purchased, not appropriation, if the proposed budget fails, followed by a few years later, the
The following year.
yeah, budget passes, then followed a few years later, now default budget, okay. And you're gonna change what word, though?
From passes to failed. The proposed budget failed, because that's what really happened. Because after you purchased the cruisers, the proposed budget that the cruisers were in failed.
Fail.
That's really, you see, nothing that you asked here, the bulk of, the main question had nothing to do with what really happened in this town.
The only answer that should come back should be, they can keep them so long as they can find the money. They
That's-
cannot include that line item in future budgets.
Well, that brings the next issue, but we're not there yet.
All right,
I'm just, this is all I'm interested in right now, of what really took place in this town. That's all I want to know.
all right.
Okay. And I do want to actually commend the Board of Selectmen, because they were talking about purchasing 2 more cruisers. They made last month, they made a motion to purchase 1 more cruiser. It failed by a short margin. But the point is, they made a point to say, we're not going to lease it. We're going to purchase it outright, 100% of the money. To me, that also told me is, they probably learned you can't continue to buy things on a lease without voter appropriation.
All right, let's
That
get
would-
back
that
to
would be-
the,
That would be an assumption that would be
let's get back to the
completely incorrect.
resolution,
The idea
which has
was, is trying
nothing
to,
to do
if
with
we
the
had the cash,
budget.
Okay.
let me just respond to it, because he makes these statements all the time that kind of turn. The reason we said to do it paid cash is if we could find the funds in this year's budget, we didn't want to have next year and be inflated even more. We are now one car in the hole.
I
Next year, we're gonna come with two. We're trying to minimize next year's impact.
I believe we need new police cruisers.
All right, let's get
And you
back
said that
to
you said that several
the
times in the meeting.
agenda item, which is the Board of Selectmen's resolution.
Which one was?
Which one was it?
The NHMA
Because
one?
I have-
Resolution to go through the chair or through NHMA or the town council.
Okay.
My belief is, it doesn't have to be me, but this committee has to give the authority and agree on the question, such as we did tonight. Because you can go off and ask a question, as has been said, but via telephone or however you want to do it, bring an answer back, and there's no paper trail or that we all either agreed on what was being asked or got a definitive answer back. So I agree that this is a cleaner way of making sure we're all on the same page. I personally don't care who asked the question, as long as the committee is all on the same
But that
page.
brings the question, like, so Chris Mr. Pascucci calls, they ask a question of him, clarifying his question. Can he then answer that question, or does he have to say, I'm sorry, I need to go back to the budget committee to be authorized to clarify my
I
question?
think it would be cleaner to do it via email,
I'm
because
okay with email.
I
really am.
want to make sure we follow the right process.
You know,
that's all.
I'm okay, you know, I don't have a problem with what's going on. It's, everybody should be on the same page, which is why it'll be good to have them here and talk with them. But then also, I will send an email tomorrow. Everybody will, who do you want me to copy on it? Just, who do you want?
myself and
Okay.
John.
You'll be copied on it, and I don't want the answer to come back just to me. Let it go back through the channels. I'm good that way.
Okay.
But,
And that's,
but just don't tell me that I'm not allowed to, because it says right in their charter, it says open to all elected members of member towns.
and I think that's all the Board of Selectmen was trying to do, was create a process so that it's consistent, so that everybody gets the
Okay.
same information, and everybody's in agreement and working together. And
That's
we've kind of
good.
turned it into now we're not working with everybody, but I think the intent was, and what I would like it to be is, I think that's a great question. We'll give you the authority to do it.
So, I mean, I can only speak from my own, my own reason for supporting it, and that is exactly it. It is to create a process so that when the question's asked, we know how the question was asked, and we get the response and not the interpretation. Because, and Chris, I'm not trying to call you out, but you, again, you have this hymn you've been reading from about some statements in the past, and no one else has it.
That's
and-
fine,
And we
okay.
just want to see it. Just like we share, we'll share legal opinion with you guys when it relates to the budget, which we have done, and we will continue to do as it relates. We just want to make sure we're all playing with the same field. And to go back to the question about cost,
Well, I
the issue around the cost is every time we get an opinion that's different than what we've been working under, we now have to go to our council and incur cost.
That's fine, and explaining it that way is a lot less of a nasty feeling than to be told you can't talk to them because you're gonna cost, it just.
I don't think that's what was said.
Well, it was a very uncomfortable feeling to listen to it, but this way, perhaps it's a reasonable request. It's been presented in a reasonable civil manner, instead of saying, we're tired of you questioning us, we're cutting you off at the knees.
And that's
So,
not what
and
was
that-
said.
And that's where we've also had
But
the
that-
discussion, that some words are really emotionally
Right.
charged, and we have to be careful what words we
So
use.
I
say-
appreciate.
Chris and I have them all tagged. We know which ones the emotion guys
So,
were.
but I'm saying is, having you explain it, what your thoughts are, is a much more civil outcome and more likely to get people on board than, I'm sorry, I'm a New Yorker, I'm gonna take things the worst way possible because that's just the way I've been programmed. So just explain it to me in a civil manner and odds are, 70% chance, agree with you.
I want to say one more thing, and then I'm okay.
Go ahead, Chris.
So please, yeah.
Chris and then Bill? All
You see,
right.
this is really important, and I want to try and emphasize why. The Board of Selectmen, they're all great people. I know them well. It's got nothing to do with that. This is not a game of gotcha. This is not a, hey, I want to cause trouble. Just realize what we're talking about here. If anything could be purchased, they won't. They're trying to do the right thing. But if anything could be purchased, and then come to us and we agree, we'll put it in the budget, we'll vet it, put it in the proposed budget. If the proposed budget fails, that's the voters telling us no. So if it's deemed a new contract or a new lease, if it's deemed, now people said yes, think of the ramifications of that long term. The school now can go out and buy $2 million worth of computers today and formulate the lease that they only got to spend $1,000 now. We'll put it in the proposed budget, the lease. If it fails, they could say, wow, the voters said yes because they turned down the proposed budget, therefore we're obligated to buy those computers. Just think of the ramifications of that and how useless this committee will be. We don't need to be here. We could all pack up and go home because there's nothing we need to do. They'll just buy whatever they want. I'm not saying they will. There's a big difference. But if the law says they could, then they don't even need the voters. The voters mean that. Then why say yes or no? If everything's going to be yes, even if you say no, if it's yes, think about that. That's all I'm saying.
I have a
Right, go ahead,
partial
Bill.
solution for that, which I'll get to later.
Now I'm done.
Well,
Bill.
I just wanted to say that, there's a lot of assumptions there, right? Yeah, we'll go off and spend, but as 5 sitting members, we have to live within a budget. And we are living within that budget, but we also have to deliver services, and we're trying to do it as cost effectively. We're not gonna go out and spend, I'm not gonna go off and replace the fleet, because I can't afford to replace the fleet. I only got so much I can get.
And he not only said selectmen, he said school board.
Right.
So he brought up some what-ifs, so.
And you could afford it if
All right.
it's in the default
Bill,
budget.
go ahead, you're on.
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. No, first of all, when I saw your attorney, the town attorney's answers to the questions, that answered a lot of questions I had. And I was prepared to come to the meeting tonight with 3 very specific questions to ask of the New Hampshire board to follow the process that we're talking about here. My point being that if somebody's gonna do that, prepare your questions ahead of time. Don't do them ad hoc like you just did now, so we can have an understanding of what you really want. Because I had very specific questions, most of which were answered by her response.
Is there anything there, Bill, that you feel needs clarification? We might as well.
No, because, to me, it's almost a dead issue at this point with me. And I'm more interested in how we're going to act in the future. Because all it did for me was say, we've been making a mistake over the past few years of having the first year of operating leases in the operating budget. That we ought to go back to the way we were years ago. And if we want a new operating lease for computers at the school, new municipal lease for computers at the school or for cruisers, separate warrant article, let it be approved, then we know it's been approved for the first year, and then I have no problem the following year with that being in the operating budget because the voters have said, go with it, okay? But at least we'll get on the record that it's been voter approved, and we're out of this whole question, non-appropriation clause, in my opinion. So I will tell you that come budget season, I will not vote to include any new municipal leases in either school or town budget, okay? I'd expect to see it in the separate warrant articles. If the committee doesn't agree with me, that's fine. If they do, then it'll be up to the boards to decide how they want to handle it.
I think that's a
But
safer way to go.
that's what I came out of with this thing, because she basically says, there are no restrictions on an operating lease, on a municipal lease, as long as it's within the operating budget that's been approved. And, that just, it doesn't make any sense to me to be.
And to a certain degree with what Chris said, they could approve anything they wanted to. My understanding of the way I read that is you have a lease with a non-appropriation clause. You could cancel it the following year and then redo it again so that it's always brand new. So in effect, you're right. This committee then has no responsibility for that. But I don't see that as happening. And even the lawyer said that would be, I don't forget her exact words, but basically that would be ridiculous. So you don't need to do that. You can obviously continue with the lease. So.
Yeah, and like I say, I'm happy to have ground rules now set, and I assume that the school board agrees with these same ground rules that town council came up with. And with those ground rules, that tells me how I want to operate as a budget committee member as far as municipal leases are concerned in the future.
I wouldn't
But I-
assume that the school district council agrees. I mean,
I would think
that's
so.
completely up to them and
Right,
their
different council.
interpretation. Yeah, a different council. All right, anything else? We've kind of beat this up. Review of expenditures. I think that was kind of wrapped into some of our discussion, but is there anything in specific that you want to call out that has been called out? All right, moving on then to member input, new business. I put the budget guideline discussion here. We had talked the last couple of months about maybe proposing some sort of a guideline, whatever that might look like. And so this was the time for you to weigh in on what that might look like, if it might look like.
Okay, my 2 cents. I agree with Brian. They're not gonna pay attention, excuse me, they don't need any direction from us. I suspect the town feels the same way. If I were over there, I'd feel the same way. So I don't see any reason why we should spend a lot of time trying to come up with a number to recommend to them, but rather, in our own mind, decide what we wanna do. And I've already made up my mind what I wanna do, and that is to have 0 tax increase in the operating budget, okay, on either town or the school. And I think it can be done, but we'll have to see the numbers. And one of the things that will force that, if we keep new municipal leases out of the budget, that brings the operating budget down anyways. And there are other things, town is gonna have more revenue, I'm sure. We have, Campbell High School bond is gone. So I think that's an achievable goal on my part, and that's where I'll be heading.
Okay. Any other thoughts on, as we head towards budgeting season, what kind of guidelines or?
The way I've always worked, not always, I should say, the way I work my budget every few years in my business, there's no need to do it every year, but I zero it out. I start with no dollars, and I re-justify everything. Because when you go from year to year, it's okay, say, okay, well, last year was, $20,000 in that line, so let's just up it 2% and call it 22. Or tight year, let's just keep it 20. You tend to not even justify the 20 if you needed it. It's a good practice to get in. Now, obviously, I'm just speaking out loud now because I can't dictate to any of the boards on how to do anything, but this is how I'm going to approach it from my end. I zero out the budgets, and then I have to justify and have every manager or department head or that's within my company justify every dollar. Not just because what you had last year, you work off of that. Zero-based budgeting, and it's a good practice to do every handful of years. And sometimes you get some surprises.
Dan?
Are the repairs at the school already begun? Swales, parking lots, catch basins? You were doing some interior work this year, or something to the gym and some bathrooms? Was that
Well,
stuff?
some of it was approved, some of it wasn't, so some of it's not in there anymore. The swales aren't in there. Parking lot's already been paved. So, what's in the process right now is the GMS is the computer lab. So, some small things.
So when you look this fall, are you gonna have any, guidelines, anything you want them to?
I'll have some questions going off of the book from last year, some of the notes that I have written in there,
Okay.
follow up on.
I agree with Chris. I've never liked just take a look at previous budgets. Enrollments changed, schools' needs changed. We cannot rely on the previous year's number as a baseline. Baseline budgeting, especially in government, is never a good idea. So, I wanna know that every dollar in the budget is what it is needed for that line item. Right, it's just, because I'm not gonna rely on past decisions made by people who lived here before I was a New Hampshire resident, so.
Beg your pardon.
I love the bill. If I could, I've told people I don't.
Goes to
do
Cindy,
voting,
too.
But I might make an exception for you. But, no, I just, for my own peace and for me to be able to support the budget, I've got to know that every dollar is needed and that every dollar has a purpose. And I do it at home, I did it at work, and those are the skills I promised to bring here, and that's what I'm gonna do.
Just for myself, I haven't seen a number that then gets just automatically bumped up by a few percent the following year. I know that my philosophy, and I don't call it zero-based budgeting, but I know that I've used, and I kind of got this idea years ago from Bill, you look at averages. What has been spent over the last year on average for the last 3, 5, whatever length of time you want. That's what I typically have used to make budgeting decisions. Listening, and I hadn't even gotten that far ahead to think about that, but listening to what Bill just said about the bond being paid off at Campbell High School, I'll have to see in terms of the town, what their revenues and expenditures are. But I think we come pretty close to zero. I had forgotten that Campbell is paid off this year, and that's certainly a good chunk that, that will make a,
Let's not kind of spend that.
no, that's, no.
No,
That-
that's not my point. If you look at the technology plan that's proposed, there's a lot of money in there for the next budget.
Oh, I know
Okay,
that.
and
I'm
you can
pretty
forget
sure-
about the Campbell bond being paid off, that's gone.
Yeah.
Which is why I say, if they're gonna be municipal leases, then get them out of the budget.
Which is, I also found interesting, because I was expecting to be hit up, or not hit up, but a plan proposed for the other schools we constantly hear need lots of repair, so it'd be interesting.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So I think that if you're gonna go zero, I think you can't, we have to be careful with the school, because I don't want zero including the however many hundreds of thousands for the bond payment to be counted towards the zero. You know?
Well,
But-
my
but-
point was that I think
you
that's
have
I hadn't even
Yeah.
considered that process, and I think zero is a reasonable, in my mind,
More than
without actually having budget in front of me, I think zero is a reasonable.
I mean, there's
Goal.
I'm just gonna say the two schools of thought here, and I'm not gonna advocate one or the other, we're not there yet, but there's zero tax increase, which means if we happen to get another $1 million of revenue, we're gonna spend another $1 million and it's still zero. Then there's a school of thought, which I'm usually a fan of, no more spending. And then if we get an additional $1 million of revenue, our taxes get dropped by $1 million. So.
I like zero better.
So, of course, yeah. And it sounds good to the average person watching, but it just means you're still spending more. So just keep that in, everybody, that could be part of the discussion.
But it's
Zero
zero.
tax rate or zero additional spending.
And your revenue could also go down.
Yeah, mine is tax rate.
Keep that in mind.
So, but those are the two options.
All right, so it sounds like we're not coming up with any specific guidelines, we just all have our own kind of
Sounds like we just
opinions
did.
about, well, it's, I think there
Heard
was a
zero,
variety,
zero,
a variety of opinions about how they're gonna look at the upcoming budgets, but no hard and fast guidelines that we're gonna, all, agree on and put forward.
As long as it's zero, John.
You
Could I?
go ahead.
Let me just take the opposing view. Let me be the one guy here.
Chris, that's so unlike you.
I'm gonna be the opposing, I'm really gonna shock everybody now. Let's increase the taxes. Let's, 5-10% more. Let's raise everybody's taxes another $500-600 a month. If we really need stuff, if people really want it, they claim, we really need stuff to run the town, let's give every homeowner in this town with a $300,000 house another $500 tax increase. Now, I don't think anybody here is going to stand up and wave their arm and say, I'm for that. We're in an economy that's dropping. Stuff is going up like crazy. Chopped meat is $4.50 a pound. So, anybody get the propane filled up? I did the other day. It was $4 a gallon.
Fill your gas tank?
I'm not that old, but I remember 99 cents a gallon. So the point is, maybe I am that old. But the point is, we have a duty to get the job done and keep it reasonable for the taxpayers. I'm going to add one more thing to what I said about the spending. It's, I hear often, and the school is a totally different animal in the town, so I'm not necessarily, educating the kids and providing services, not saying one's better or more important than the other, but it's different animals, and I think we all agree when you're looking at budgets. But we hear a lot, people want this. Really? That's the question I have. Sometimes the people voted in things 5 years ago. We can go from any new position to new things. And just because somebody voted it in 5 years ago, that's now the new stop point. It's like, you gotta go back. If they did say they wanted it, it might have been by a small margin. Maybe some things we gotta ask the voter again. Do you really want it? Because maybe they changed their mind. Maybe 5 years ago, when everybody had $50 bills coming out of their pocket, when the economy was great, pre-2008, they wanted everything. Now it's different. Maybe I don't need that, because I know people that are giving up summer vacations, buying the new car, fixing the clunker, turning the heat down in the winter, not turning the air conditioner on in the summer, and not watering their lawn because water prices are crazy. So those are some of the things we owe the people of this town just because they either said they wanted something, or maybe they didn't say it, maybe it's the governing bodies think people want it. We need to question from our end, do the people want it and are willing to pay for it?
Any other comments? All right. Moving on then, public input.
Thank you. Just a couple comments sitting in the peanut gallery here, because, you know, I remember sitting at the board, there's like this bubble, right? And then everybody at home watching sometimes doesn't know, you know, what the heck is going on. I thought it was really funny that, and I've always had a problem with this, but it's just me. So the board makes a motion, and like it did earlier, and like it has any bearing, the two ex officio guys vote no, right? And so I sit back and I go, why would the town, for what logical reason would the town and the school vote no when a majority of the budget committee, who this is the committee, vote yes? There was a motion. I wrote it down. I don't remember what it was exactly, but I wrote it. Ex officio voted no to have. Yeah.
And so did I.
So,
Oh, okay.
but I thought that was interesting. And I found interesting that on the one side, I hear, well, the Board of Selectmen wants to work together, but we don't want you to have the information. So we're going to restrict it and make it harder, not open. But we want to help you guys. And to me, that's two sides of the same coin. You can't have it both ways. And so I'm just saying, as a citizen, you can't say, we really want to help, but you can't be free and open to go do what you want. And as we learned here, and as I learned on the school board, there's no way, there is no law that stops any elected official from going out and asking questions and speaking to their constituents. Of course they have no power outside this room. Of course, because it takes a quorum to do anything. But we are elected by people to hear our concerns, to ask the questions for us. I expect the people that I elect to represent me to go do the due diligence out there. Go find the answers. Don't sit and wait here. You can't ask that question here. Go out and do. And the other thing is, when you do that, everything's got to be what this committee says. You shut down the minority voice. It could go 4-0 or 4-5, 4-3, whatever it is. The fact is, by one vote, you shut down the minority voice, which is shutting down a good portion of our community. There should never be, if the question is to go obtain information, there should never be a vote of this board to say, no, we don't want more information. Now, granted, there are budgetary considerations that Mr. Brunello spoke of. I understand that. But quite honestly, if you go find information that is counter to what their paid attorney said, then there should be more conversation. Because if you hire an attorney and the attorney cannot support your position, you need a new attorney. Okay? Now, an attorney in non-public will give you the straight skinny, right? But outside that non-public conversation, that attorney better advocate your position. Otherwise, why are you hiring him? He's on purpose an advocate. That's the word for it. He's an advocate. Of course, an attorney is going to fight and deliver an opinion that is legal but vigorous in defense of your position, because that's what an attorney's Hippocratic oath is, right? Oh, I'm sorry.
That hasn't been my experience, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. And then my last thing, on a year-to-year lease, right? So the conversation was, well, there was a Supreme Court case, and this is where it comes from. There's a Supreme Court case out of Hampton that said a legislative body, a governing body has every right to spend to the bottom line without question. If they choose they need it, they have every authority to go out and do it. They could absolutely enter into a lease. That's absolute right. It's an RSA. RSA says they can absolutely do it. And Cindy said it a while ago, it'd be stupid to do it, but they could lease this year in this year's budget, see they have the money, turn them back in. Next year, say, geez, we need 2 more police cars. Go get it again. But the problem is that's wicked expensive, right? Because you have to outfit them. I mean, it was just discussed here, right? The fact of the matter is, the reason the law doesn't allow for that is this note that we just talked about at Campbell. If that was really the way the law was intended, then you could just go build another school because it's in the budget. We have $800,000 in the budget. So guess what? That lease ended, or that note ended. Well, now we need a new school, by God, governing body. We need this now. It's in the budget. It's in the bottom line. As long as we find the $800,000, what does it matter? You see, that's the thing. When you go read, and I know Mr. Spencer disagrees with me, however, when you go read every single RSA about it, and not just go on what you believe to be true, but when you actually go look at them and ask questions of attorneys that specialize in this law, they'll tell you what it means. Now, I've paid some attorneys for some legal advice, and they absolutely believe what I believe. I don't believe it. I didn't come to it on my own. I went and asked, why in God's name would I chase something that would cost me money, which was wrong? I didn't go begging for someone to take my opinion. I went to go find out what the opinion was so I could actually make an argument. I'm saying you're going to overspend this lease because there's going to be a court case. Because the Board of Selectmen now went and found their opinion and are now standing on it. That's what I needed to hear. But they'll be required to return those 2 police cars, and you will overspend this lease because there's not $80,000 in that budget by the numbers that we've been given to this point. So y'all can take that as you wish, and how to question the Board of Selectmen or not about something that is now illegal because they can't spend to the bottom. They can't overspend the bottom. So, I mean, obviously it has to go through a court case, but we'll have to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Just, do we have a meeting on the 24th?
We have a meeting on Thursday, July 24th.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
so August, we don't have a meeting, correct?
It's August, we do not have a meeting, that's
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
And then we start up again September 25th, I think. 25th, yes.
Okay, thank you. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.